One thing I'm seeing a lot of success with this year in this Black Friday, Cyber Monday ramp-up period is diversifying the range of creative more.
If you were to open Meta or Instagram right now and start scrolling, you're going to see a ton of the same ad basically, because most of the time if something works really well, like text only repeating with a product image, everyone's doing that. So to kind of cut through that noise, we've got some notes here about like really being a founder, picking up your phone, doing something that's kind of eye-catching and exciting, because that's the stuff that gets buzz around this time of year. The stuff that looks the same is really good in the lead up, and you'll get a lot of like new people coming in with those product images and stuff like that. But to really cut through and expand and grow, you gotta think different.
It's all killer, no filler, the DTC Podcast. I'm Eric, and I'm back with Pilothouse's socials team, Brain Trust, Taylor, Aves, and Jacob. And we're here to talk about what makes a great sales ad. This is the period of the year where everyone's focused on sales. I want to start with, a little bit of a preamble on the nature of a sale. Everyone assumes you got to make a sale, and that's actually what this podcast is going to be about, how to do great sales. But let's start with some pre-talk about first assessing why you do a sale and when you might not want to do a sale.
I think when it comes down to it, a sale is a great opportunity to create a ton of buzz for your offering and tap into relevant trends that are happening at a broad level. So when it comes to when to do a sale and when not to do a sale, I think it really depends on ultimately a lot of factors, like how your brand is perceived by your personas, what you're known for, what kind of opportunity you anticipate a sale would present for you from a customer, not only a revenue perspective and getting more eyeballs, but also from a quality of customer perspective. But I'd say more often than not, when you think about it through the consumer's shoes, a sale is a great opportunity to say, hey, we're thinking about you and we want to offer you something great so that you can get in on this too, without any sort of barrier to entry. Let's try and remove that. So a lot of the time when done right and when there's a lot of thought that goes into it, the consumers should be excited and thankful for the opportunity.
I come across a lot of brands, and there's sort of this prestige idea of not running sales, and there's brands at certain levels love to find either don't offer sales or they do things where they're not discounting their product, they're adding value. I just saw AG1 are giving away their hats with a certain level of purchase, which is a great little status symbol. That's I take AG1. What else have you seen I guess a lot of brands that work with agencies are running sales. I think that's probably the case.
Yeah, I was going to say, most likely if you are listening to the DTC podcast, you're probably not maybe above running sales. I think there's a very small handful of brands in the world that I know won't be on sale. So I'm making those purchases in the summer, and I'm thinking luxury goods, like the glasses I was showing you, Taylor. Those will not be going on sale. So those are a very luxury price point. And I, as a consumer, am conditioned to know Loewe is not going to have a Black Friday sale, but if I want a bag, I will just drop that cash at some point throughout the year. But most of the time, if specifically paid social advertising is important to your brand, there's no way around it. And I also think I've personally worked with brands who do feel like they're sort of above doing that. It doesn't work out for them, I gotta say. Again, if paid social is a way that you're growing your business and you don't have the eyeballs that someone like Loewe or Apple does, it is a handful of brands in the entire world that can get away with not running sales. So if you're still in the acquisition phase of your business, it's definitely important to think about the way that you can manage it too, whether that is a gift with purchase, because that's still technically a sale, right? It's a gift with purchase or a tiered offer, whatever you have to do. But definitely if you're still thinking about paid social as a catalyst for growth, run a sale.
And here's how you do it. What are the biggest things you're focused on when you're crafting a sale, especially for Q4?
Yeah, there's quite a few we can get into, but I think a lot of it is taking the identity of what you've tested, taking, this data you do have, and whether that's from a sale or not, you're going to start to apply it to the sale. So, you want to make sure that you have an asset bank of creative that is using these colors you've proven out to work, these aesthetics of, different imagery, these different voices and videos, these different characters you've used, all these things that you've learned, and like simply iterate on it in many ways, and add that urgency. And, depending on the brand, like some brands kind of meet in the middle. They don't run as many sales. They maybe run just a couple a year, and those are the types of brands that will feel a bigger impact from a sale typically if they are large, but they might be hurting themselves and kicking themselves in the foot by not running sales in other months when their competitors are. So it's about balancing that. But really, when you do run a sale, you need to execute. And we're going to get into some of those tips, I think, on the creative side, using the learnings you found throughout the year, essentially, if we're kind of speaking to Black Friday timing right now, of course. But
okay, ad creative, as always on this, is a recurring theme. Ad creative is the fuel that fires the machine. So I think that's a great point, Jacob, that we're looking to really dial in on the learnings that we've made throughout the year on what works best for your avatars and what your messaging is. What else are we thinking about from the creative standpoint, Aves?
Yeah, I think it's about a lot of things. I think a lot about volume this time of year. I feel like, especially if you're a high scale brand, like I feel like Taylor is unfortunately going to launch like hundreds of ads this week, because you get to a point where like the amount you're spending is so high. And sort of a spoiler alert here too, I think Taylor and I are planning on doing a separate pod on some of the success we've been seeing on AppLovin and across different platforms. But we just start to see such a demand and hunger for content. So trying to tie things back, like Jacob mentioned, to the work that we did in the 11 months leading up to now is really important, and understanding like what it is that works. Like I do a lot of testing in terms of like different, like very humanized, kind of using warehouse imagery ads right up to polished brand imagery, what in those different categories works really well for each of our brands, and then iterating on that until sort of the cows come home. And then a phrase I've been using a lot this year is like kind of scraping the bottom of the weird barrel is kind of what's going on in this.
What happens after that?
I don't know. we haven't hit the bottom of the barrel, but
okay.
Trying to figure out ways too, because I think if you were to open like Meta or Instagram right now and start scrolling a couple weeks before Black Friday, you're going to see a ton of the same ad basically, because most of the time if something works really well, like text only repeating with a product image, everyone's doing that. So to kind of cut through that noise, trying to find different ways, like we've got some notes here about like really being a founder, picking up your phone, doing something that's kind of eye-catching and exciting, because that's the stuff that gets buzz around this time of year. The stuff that looks the same is really good in the lead up, and you'll get a lot of like new people coming in with those product images and stuff like that. But to really cut through and expand and grow, you gotta kind of think different, and start to kind of almost stick your neck out a bit. Just weird stuff.
I feel like you see great examples of local businesses doing that, with whether it's like the car dealerships, or like there's a woman who makes pies that like cuts herself into movies and in really dramatic, fun ways. And I feel like that's an opportunity that I don't see many D2C brands ever executing on or trying to. I don't know if they would be disappointed when it turns out to be like a giant blanket brand rather than like a person that makes pies. But like, yeah, I think there's something there.
I've got some cake themed ads.
Okay, so scraping the bottom of the weird barrel. Let's go. You opened the Pandora's barrel. So what does that mean?
I absolutely like getting personal on the pod, getting real on the pod. I was working a really long day, and I like was sitting in front of my kind of like brainstorming board. These are the brand, and I was like, what have I never seen anybody do? And that was like how I put together a lot of the ideas that we'll be running with. We can connect back on how they do, but especially on these new platforms where like we're seeing good results very quickly. I was like, what are people not doing? How do I differentiate? Because especially when we're talking about expanding channels and there's a lot of people kind of flooding them, they're probably taking those same like influencer, like, here's my thing, like, I love it, get it today, swipe down. So I really was thinking about what have I never seen a human being do in an ad, and how can I like put that out there in a way that's okay and will be allowed to run.
And to do
but
a
also
cake.
gets the sale message across. Yeah. I don't want
And
to
to do a
reveal all
cake.
my cards. Yeah.
No.
I
Okay.
threw,
No, very cool.
my
I love cake.
cat in there as well. Like, and we work with a lot of really cool brands. And again, we were just like, what are people not doing? How can we create
That's a great
that
shout.
organic buzz and get a lot of engagement? Because that also like helps with delivery. Obviously, it'll help you in the algo if you can get engagement on those.
Because it's so easy. You're constantly scanning for something that you know is an ad kind of thing. And if it hooks you in some other way, you just stand so much better of a chance of landing that impression.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And one thing to add to that too is like one thing I'm seeing a lot of success with this year as in this Black Friday, Cyber Monday ramp up period is diversifying the range of creative more. So like I can think of recent examples where you might try branded statics only, and then it results in like crazy high costs. It doesn't back out quite at the conversion rate you're hoping for. Maybe it underwhelms you a little bit, but it might be something as simple as like catalog ads work for your brand on Meta. You bring in sale catalog frames as an overlay, and these have a huge cost advantage comparatively to like video or static at this time. Or you bring in certain video types, or like the cake ad that Aves is saying. There's like a really cool like opportunity from the execution side on the media buying and media planning side too, to diversify a little bit and segment by creative type even at this time of year.
Yeah, that's something we say like all year round too, even in an evergreen sense. Like you need to have that creative range, or else you're not accounting for like each stage of awareness, which is really important to do. Like when you diversify, then you're kind of encompassing like, this isn't always 100% true, but most likely like a branded static will work better bottom of funnel when people are a little bit more warmed up, and you're just adding overlays that, mention like fast shipping is really important around this time of year, or what the actual offer is, instead of just like running that type of ad to someone who's like absolutely cold and has never seen the brand isn't really going to have an impact. I'm not going to say that cake ad would have more of an impact, but something like that will, because it's like tonally it fits with the brand. If it features the product, that's really good. And so, yeah, you're accounting for like different stages of awareness when you broaden up your creative range.
I heard an interesting something on TikTok the other day. It was basically about not making your audience work. And I think I think you want to strike a dichotomy where you're intriguing them with something, but when it comes to your message, when it comes to like what your product does, the value prop they're getting, you just want to keep it as simple and straightforward. Like don't make the audience work when it comes to the sales messaging.
Yeah, we've been joking a lot. I feel like Taylor and I like using language like the things are on sale. Like this time of year, it's like, This is it, and it is offered to you at a discount. So
yeah,
there you go.
If you want to go to there, it's now the time.
Yeah, we have a few of like some of the best practices we've seen. Some of these ones here you listed out, Taylor, we can go through that, kind of play on that, like, really making sure the first half second is the punchiest. I think that is how much time you have essentially. And it's maybe even less during like Black Friday, when people's eyes are just shifting sale to sale and they get sale fatigue. Any creative you're putting out there that's video, like think about it for 10, 20 minutes. What can that first 1 second look like? How can we make that like weird, unique, whatever?
Yeah.
That's just
hooky.
a simple little tip, right? Less than 10 to 15 seconds. You can't be having super long ads unless you're doing something super, super creative. People are just going to move on. The up to messaging is an attractor. If you're doing like a 30% off site-wide sale, like up to 30% off site-wide is very good way to like frame it. And then it gives you that flexibility for some products to be 20% off. And a lot of brands will make the mistake where in their creative, they do just say 30% off site-wide. And then halfway through the sale, they say, oh crap, half of our products margins don't make sense at these benchmarks. Like those ones can only be 15% off site-wide. You got to reset every ad, lose all your social proof halfway through the biggest sale of the year. Seen that a couple times. So yeah, thinking of, being as broad as you can, as punchy as you can, but also keeping it super simple. And just kind of thinking about those things are some of the things that will help with the actual creative itself too.
Very cool. We mentioned the sort of portfolio, or like the diversity of creative that we want to have. And I think you guys have written down some examples of just some of the types of creatives that fit within that diversity. I think that might be helpful for people to spot check against what they're kind of running. So when we think of the kinds of ads we should be running and testing, what do those kind of break down to?
I feel like this is always an easier conversation with visuals, but I would start on like a very like unbranded side of the range, let's call it. So that is like your CGC that is grabbing an iPhone,
customer generated content for any beginners out there.
Filming the product yourself, like Taylor and I have seen this with some of our high scale brands, like a 5 to 10 second iPhone shot video of the product just existing with some overlay that I'm in there on TikTok on CapCut doing myself very quickly. Like that works really well. And again, it like just shows you what the product is. So if you think about someone who doesn't know your brand, your product, what it does, that type of content addresses that person really perfectly. And then the sort of like next step towards branded is like actual creator content. So that's talking head, unboxing, like very direct to camera. They're talking through either pain points, benefits, like it's a bit longer form and a bit more polished, but still CGC video based. And then from there, you start to look at kind of like more branded actual ad styles. So I would put in the middle, like just really text bold, like almost just text, like sale, what I was mentioning before with a product render. That kind of sits really comfortably in the middle because it shows the product and then it also tells someone that there's a sale. So it kind of works, like I said, in the middle. And then the most kind of branded side is where you start to get into like your photography that you're doing that really sets the tone of who you are and what your voice is. So using your brand colors, it's like my famous fake coffee cup brand. It's maybe set in the type of kitchen that we envision our kind of core persona would use. So whether that's like a really trendy apartment looking kitchen, or maybe it's like very cottagecore, depending on your brand, it's kind of giving that like dream aesthetic that your personas probably resonate with the most. So that's like the absolute like top tier of very branded, very identity forward. And then obviously way at the other end was grab your iPhone, film the coffee cup and see what happens. But there's kind of like markers of the range almost. And then obviously there's like a bunch of different ways you can interpret each of those things.
Will we see sticky notes this holiday season?
Maybe. I think probably.
I'm a couple accounts I've been involved with are running them already. So, but blue or green and red sticky notes.
Not just there you go.
Whoa.
Life-changing tweak there.
Yeah.
I would love a test of like what's the most profitable color of sticky note to use.
Where are we at with Advantage Plus these days on how much of the budget it represents? And then are we thinking about creative any differently for Advantage Plus because it's sort of more modular?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I would say like it's definitely a huge like power player type campaign for a lot of accounts. Typically, like I'm still a firm believer in a balance. Like I do run BAU style campaigns and like
what is BAU?
Oh, business as usual for anyone who doesn't know.
Business as usual.
Sorry. So like the traditional type ABO, CBO campaign type deal. Because of the, like now with Meta's like audience segments, you can break down the data a little bit better, but that lack of control on the driving new visits forward, especially in the build up to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that's kind of an interesting factor. But yeah, like to your point, Eric, there's such an aggressive kind of leaning delivery style that tends to build social proof up pretty quickly. There's a lot of like benefits around punchiness, I think, to them. So it's a really great opportunity to leverage it pretty heavily as part of your promo strategy. And there's different things happening on the platform right now too. Like Meta's been starting to default the engaged view attribution setting in some of the builds that some people may have noticed, depending, which is focused more on like a more incremental type of view attribution than the traditional just one day view. So looking more at like who's watched a certain percentage or length of a video, if that's included. So there's some really cool opportunities around like optimizing for click, and then leaning on different creative range to keep your costs intact while driving incremental lift using Advantage Plus. But there's a place for both types of delivery still in from what we're seeing across the board.
Nice. What else are we talking about for running an effective sales ad today?
I could probably yap about this a lot, but just the sale ad is not important. Thinking about where you are sending these people is equally as important. Can see Taylor nodding, because the consideration of, like, again, a lot of the people that are coming in during this period, especially if you're running a sale, are going to be like net new to your business when they're coming in through paid media. So thinking about like how they're coming in after that ad. Are you sending them to like one very specific PDP for a product where like it just kind of boxes them in and they don't explore? Are we sending them to like a collection page? What is on the landing page? Like, how are you thinking about the information that they need? Especially if you're like a highly technical product, how do you get them from being like a net new customer to your business to actually making the purchase in that single session on the landing page? Like, what are the things they need to hear? And again, that is typically like the conversion friction removers will be things like shipping, any kind of return policy that you have. Social proof is really huge, so adding reviews, and also like any kind of genuine UGC that you have of people using the product and really creating a lot of buy-in. You can, drive as much net new traffic, but if it's sketchy, if it's giving like weird Temu vibes when people get to your site, like you're probably not going to be able to capture as many conversions as you want. So I feel like it's equally as important. And like if you don't have the capabilities to test actual landing pages and build those experiences out, like I feel like Taylor can probably speak to this. We've seen a lot of success and failure through testing like different just pages on site. Like, where are we sending people? Is it the homepage? Is it like the PDP, like I mentioned, collection pages? There's lots to test.
I heard an interesting bit yesterday from Kurt Elster, who has the unofficial Shopify podcast, and he runs a website, a Shopify building site called EtherCycle. And he was talking about, he advocates brands actually having like a deal page, like a page on the site where people can see all deals on the site. And I think that's such a smart thing for this time, because it's like, again, in the name of like keeping it as dead simple for everyone, they don't always know what they're looking for, but they know they're looking for deals.
Yeah, and I could say like we've seen success with that ourselves, 100% aligned. Like from a lot of our testing, we do a lot of work with landing pages throughout the year, and we do see the behavioral shifts start to happen around this time of year, particularly, at the time of recording on November 20th, within the last like week and a half, we've seen a pretty major, I'd say, shift comparatively to like what we even saw earlier in the month around like the potential reason someone might be buying something for. And so routing direct to something more streamlined, or more aligned to getting them exactly what they need to make a pretty quick decision when they're feeling that excitement about the offer that you presented, that does tend to go hand in hand with this time of year. So yeah, running, like we've been testing PDP, going to collection pages, gift guides, like sales style pages. And generally speaking, we've seen more performance out of those short, kind of snappy, focused type routes rather than the longer style ones that we might see at a different time of the year. So it's a really interesting, it's something you kind of always have to test and see, and it varies brand to brand, but it's definitely worth considering.
I just discovered some other notes here that are worth probably mentioning back on the creative before we sign off. The one here was, I love this one because it's worked for me in the past, where you just go back to an old creative that you ran and turn it on and it works. Like, I think that's a really good thing for brands who've been running a lot of ads for a lot of Black Fridays. Like, go back, find all your winners and like see if they still work, if it still aligns,
Yeah, that kind of matches to what Jacob was saying earlier about like being broad. Typically, like you'll find a groove as a brand of like what type of sale works really well for you around this time of year. So thinking about that when you build your creative, like we even do it for non-Black Friday sales, where it's like, I know that I'm just putting like sale on now, sale, because we'll be able to turn that back on. So really thinking about not making it so like niche to the last detail of like it ends at December 2nd midnight. Like adding that kind of thing on usually stops you from doing that. So it's good to think, how do I make this broad and still successful so that I can turn it back on later?
Nice. Account structure and creative forward versus business forward. What do you, this is the same sort of deal from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, just thinking through to like the different, really what your, I think perceived value is kind of how to frame that. Like the conversation we had at the beginning where different brands are at a different place in their journey around what is most valuable to the customer based on their offering. Like it can vary widely from vertical to this to that. Like some brands you'll see sale ads, they just like crush immediately out of the gate. Some brands, the customers are more interested in like new product launches or collab product drops that they do or various things like that. So really just speaking to a lot of the amazing points that Avery and Jacob made around your creative strategy and what you're thinking about. This is a good time to look at, like, take a step back as well and think, like, am I promoting all of these ads and the opportunities that we've created on the creative side through a structure that makes sense based on what we know about our broad customers? Is my campaign structure set up to highlight different messages to different customers? Is it set up to focus on creative, or is it set up to focus more on like product type details? A good example I can say is like, I've seen some success from being very consolidated, while also seeing success from knowing the ad account in depth, knowing the customer in depth, and segmenting based, like dedicating a campaign to this type of creative or this kind of angle, and then dedicating another campaign, if I'm using like ASC, to another one, knowing that there might be trade-offs and advantages and I want to scale one or the other. There can be benefits to that too. So I think it's just, this is a good time to be intentional about that and put all that work that you've done for the last year trying to build up the evergreen side into that, apply that knowledge to your structure as well.
I love your point here, just about segmenting by creative benefit. I think that's something that's sort of, we talked about that for years in terms of the pilot test and how you're kind of using the creative benefit to kind of suss out your angles a little bit. But really being intentional about who you're talking to, what stage of the funnel they're at. And then finally, just what are we doing with catalog ads over the Q4 period?
Yeah, they perform quite well. So you definitely want to make sure you have them live and your store or your product syncing accurately and everything. Nice, clean, good looking product photos. And then, in the actual catalog itself, maybe set it up in a few different sets or collections, and then pair it with Black Friday or holiday sale, ad copy, so that it's not just the catalog. It's not just all your products being shown to these people that, know about you, but haven't purchased. It's also letting them know the sale is on. And yeah, those tend to pick up, early November, right around now. So I would say just don't lose sight of them, and definitely a good time to kind of allocate more budget towards them. As
the period rages on, are you swapping in new creative that's adding new urgency, that has overlays about last chance, sale last 24 hours, whatever?
Yeah, 100%. Trying to keep it a bit fresh throughout the sale, because like Aves said, you're going to see the same ad multiple times, but then you see that same ad a 10th time and all of a sudden it says last chance. Oh, it's got you it's got you hooked maybe again. Oh, it is actually the last chance. And yeah, you want to add that urgency, especially basically like kind of getting to the end of November into actual Thanksgiving weekend. You especially want to have urgency. Adding countdown timers to your landing pages is a good thing to do kind of once there's like 3-4 days left. You don't want to do that now with, 2 weeks left, but adding urgency, headlines, limited stock left, our sales almost up, secure yours before the holidays. You never know with shipping, like all these little iterations of your top winner is definitely key for sure.
We saw last year this worked really well on a couple of brands. Like if you've already had stuff that's sold out or like near sellout, if you know that won't come back before the new year, that's really powerful messaging. Like we won't restock until January, we won't restock until February is really impactful in that like same chunk of time that Jacob was referring to. And I think too, like something that I like to do, which is a little bit cheeky on the landing page side, is like once I start selling out of bestsellers, I keep them on the page and I say, this is gone. Like there's 5 other versions of this left, but 2 of them have sold out, now 3 of them, and continuing to kind of update those live experiences. I find it just kind of lights a fire under people's butts. And then if you have anything extra, add at the very end too. Like this is something I feel like we suggest to brands. So if it's like a extra percentage off, or if there's like one product category that you can offer a slightly deeper discount on just for Thanksgiving weekend, and getting that creative in that says like 72 hours only, whatever the time frame is for just that weekend, really powerful. Because I think we all know, again, you can open Instagram right now, like most people are already running their deals. So adding that little extra razzle dazzle at the very end, and not just having it live on site or in ad copy, but having specific creative for it, I think is really important.
Very cool. And this goes back to the kinds of creative I think that we run, but I would just, it sounds, what's the dot style of creative and where do we use that in our sale campaigns?
Love. This is my legacy, by the way. So dot style ad is like super simple. And it's basically, it works really well if you have a product that is itself very like aesthetically pleasing. But basically it's just like a product render on a plain color background, but adding a like dot around the product to really draw the eye in. There's a lot of like tips and tricks and psychology behind like where people look when they're scrolling. So adding that dot behind the product wasn't just like a random fluke. It was to make sure that people are actually looking at it, especially when it's a product that like looks interesting and fun. So adding that, and then you can pair that with a bunch of messaging. I definitely have myself been like 10 p.m. editing ads that look like that, because they're also very easy to change the messaging. So like we were just talking about, if you have like a Hail Mary, you're like, you know what, this one cup, we can add this extra 15% off. That's a really easy ad to go in and just change what the text says. And it doesn't take you too long. It's not like these deep, like UGC cut to cuts, or it's not like a talking head video where you're going to have to get a new voiceover from a creator. Those are the type of ads that like, if you think you might be making last minute changes, are really easy to just like swap the text, and they're really impactful because again, they really draw the eye into the actual product, and they have a lot of negative space too, which is also helpful.
What do you use? Are you using Photoshop or using Canva?
I use Photoshop, but you can do it in Canva. I'm not judgy. If you're a Canva marketing gal,
and you're picking some like complementary pastel or lighter color for these dots. What color are these dots? These are bright, loud, pink, fuchsia. Like to
really, especially for sale periods, I think it's really important to like almost like aggravate the eyeballs a little bit. So like, I worked with a brand for a while that we established like 2 colors. It was like black and yellow were always the sale colors for this brand, and they weren't used outside of sale periods. And then I think it made it really powerful because they were big enough that people would recognize that immediately without having to be told that there was a sale. So I could just do those dot ads in that color scheme, and people would know sort of intrinsically, because we trained them over a number of years to know that like when you see an ad from this brand in these colors, because they were usually quite branded and all their ads are really beautiful, except for sale periods, they just look really, really bad, and people would know. And we'd get really, really, really affordable clicks on those ads because, like I said, people were just trained to know.
And because it's the construction color, you know, it's just, you know what I mean? It indicates
sign.
Look at me, right?
Yeah.
Black and yellow, literally.
I was working with one of our designers at Pilothouse, and I was like, I know this looks bad. This was like just the other day, but I was like, please put these colors together. I know that it looks whack, and these 3 colors should never live together on an ad that we're putting money behind, but I think it'll work.
And they are Pilothouse's colors. So if you love the podcast and you want to work with these people, you just got to go to pilothouse.co. Come check out our services. We're still taking on new clients into Q4 and all year round. So come on over. Thanks for coming on All Killer, No Filler today, guys. I look forward. Actually, maybe you could just, Aves, talk a little bit about what your plan, because I'm excited. We're going to get Aves doing like her own podcast at some point, I think. And definitely on, she's going to run a show without me just on the All Killer, No Filler podcast coming up. What are you thinking for that?
I don't know.
Okay.
You know what? I think I'll probably, I really want to keep exploring the topic of brand and performance. And I feel like a lot of people like to think and talk about that. I've been trying to make a podcast about the Got Milk advertising campaign for like 3 years now. And I might take advantage of my own podcast to talk about Got Milk for like an hour straight. But no, I think talking about how brand now functions in a performance landscape is like a never-ending topic. And I know this might not be without you, Eric, but Taylor and I are planning. We don't want to give away too much of our like secrets before Black Friday and cause too much competition for ourselves. But we do want to put together a podcast on what we've been seeing with AppLovin, because it's been really exciting. And I think if you guys don't follow Taylor on Twitter, he's been tweeting about it, but there's some really cool stuff happening there that we want to share.
I'm so curious. Are we sure? I know we'll get into it. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but are we sure it's incremental? I'm always interested in these networks where they've got these pixels placed. And I've worked in that app space for like years and years ago, and it's not the cleanest space. So I'm interested to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, honestly, from my experience working in that side as well, I have my doubts going into it. But yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised. It's been really interesting. We can speak. I won't give too much away. We'll speak more about it. But yeah, it's pretty.
It's gonna be an emergency broadcast because everyone's talking about AppLovin because they're just giving away so much cash. I guess too. That's a big part of it. And I do want to be involved in one of your branding podcasts, because I could talk about my snafu on social media today, where I joked that I was rebranding the D2C logo like the Jaguar logo, and I thought it was pretty good, but nobody else got it. So everyone was just like, "Oh, you're creating a shitty logo for D2C. Congratulations!" But no, if you're listening to this, we're not changing the logo. Just making a joke that no one who's maybe have to be as chronically online as I am in order to have gotten it. But it would be interesting to talk about that on a podcast one time, Aves, the Jaguar.
Yeah. Maybe in like 2 weeks, Eric, people will come back to that tweet and be like, "This is so funny."
It's ahead of my time.
You might have been too early on the rebrand.
It's happened to me before. Anyway, let's leave it there. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilothouse's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.